Now we're going to get to the last part, and I'll try to wrap this quickly. So let's do it. So in this section, we're going to cover submission publication, and then I'm going to go quickly later on over response to reviews and I guess reviewing. Oh, okay, so that was highlighted mistakenly. So the success of a well-written and well-designed paper depends on its timeliness and compatibility. So with the target audience. So here also MICCAI, it means that timing is important of your discovery and your research, and the compatibility with the audience. Okay, so the compatibility and importance of the topic at this time. So nowadays, for example, we talk about AI safety, robustness, generalizability. So these are very hot, important, timely topics that are compatible with our time. And also, in terms of target audience, it means you need to focus on, you need to be aware of the type of reader you're targeting with your writing. Okay, so we mentioned this earlier. So you need to do that. You can check recently published works at MICCAI. So for example, if you intend to submit to 2025, you can read papers published 2024 and 23 related to your research topic. If you're working on GNNs, cover all GNNs papers that are published at MICCAI. If you are doing GNNs in the particular topic, explainability, explainable GNNs, for example, graph neural networks, you may want to do both, cover both, right? So it depends on your topic. So here, for the response of the reviews and writing, so let's look at the actions, you know, like when you submit a MICCAI paper, so what are the different, you know, responses you may get and actions you need to take? And something you need to remember is that your attitude is your altitude. So how do you handle criticism, rejections, all these things, okay? So first, you submit the paper. When you submit the paper, you can have a triage reject. That's the worst case, which means you exceeded the number of papers, you did not follow the author guidelines properly. So your paper will get desk rejected right away without going into review stage, okay? Next is when it goes into the review stage, you have an early accept, which is wonderful. So that's, I think, about 10% or less than 10% of the papers, definitely less get an early accept. I think it's about 5 to 10. And then you may get a rejection, okay, which means here in these two cases, you don't need to write a rebuttal. You don't need to respond to the reviewers because your paper was either accepted or rejected, okay? Now, the last option number 3 is rebuttal, which means there are maybe 2 reviewers that said your paper is quite good, but one reviewer was not convinced and he gave you a bad score. Or maybe 2 reviewers were doubtful and one was really excited about your research. So here you will get into the rebuttal stage, which means you need to submit a response to the 3 reviewers or more. And the instructions and the guidelines will be specified by on the website by, for example, the MICCAI Society and the conference itself. And this is rebuttal here is equivalent to the review stage for journals. So if you're submitting a journal paper, of course, you can get a desk reject. You can get an early accept, which is extremely rare, reject, and you can get a review stage. Okay, so here you review and you write a long response to all reviewers. You may, actually the length of the response sometimes exceeds by a large margin the length of the paper. So you can have a 30-page response or to a 20-page paper, for example, or a 10-page paper. So the last outcome is either, so after the rebuttal, you may get an acceptance, which means your paper gets accepted, so that's a yes, or you may get a rejection, so your paper gets rejected, okay? So after, which means the reviewers were not convinced. Now, let me show you quickly, and we're gonna wrap up with this, how the review works. MICCAI conference, so MICCAI conference is a class A1 conference, and here in this example, I will just walk you through the journey of the review of a MICCAI paper. So first, for each paper, so you submit a MICCAI paper, okay? So And for each paper, you have 3 reviewers on average. So at least 3 reviewers assigned. So you have, I'm going to use this, okay? So you have 3 reviewers, reviewer 1, reviewer 2, reviewer 3. So each of these reviewers will write a review, okay? So strength, weaknesses of the paper, of course they will, and they will give a score. So depending on the average score, your paper will get accepted. So if the average score is good, your paper will get accepted. Okay, so here you can get early accept. And if it's really low, you can get an early reject. Okay, you can get a reject right here, depending on the average score, which is fixed by the MICCAI conference. Okay, so usually it is quite high. So I don't remember the scores in detail, but it's above average. It's above average, way above average. Okay, now. So these 3 reviewers now they will communicate, they will submit their reviews, and these will get to what we call a meta reviewer, who is a senior researcher. They're an area chair, we call them AC, area chair, or a meta reviewer. So the meta reviewer will make the decision. So the meta reviewer will take these reviews and they will write a single short requirements where they will emphasize the issues with the paper, okay? So a short summary of these 3 reviews and emphasizing basically what is there. So I served as an area chair for I think 3 years at MICCAI conference, and you need to actually read all the reviews very well. You need to read the paper, the reviews, and you need to summarize them and find out if the reviewers have missed something critical and pick up what is consistent. So here, it's a heavy exercise actually, and you need to point out to the authors where they need to focus, because the rebuttal is actually very short. The rebuttal is, I think, if 3,000 to 4,000 characters, not even words. So it's actually, you know, maybe 2.5 paragraphs, 2 big paragraphs, so less than a page, okay? Or 1 page. So it's actually short, and it's limited in characters. So you copy paste it into the CMT platform. Now, so when the meta reviewer submits, the area chair submits the summary here, let's say the paper will get into rebuttal. So the author needs to write their feedback. So the author will write their feedback. Now, writing the feedback is an art. You need to be very specific. You need to be very concise because you have limitedness in space. You need, for example, you can call reviewers R1, R2, R3. You can you can cluster them. You say R1, R2, they pointed out this issue. You can put, for example, SOTA methods, state of the art, R1, R2, and you address it quickly, okay? You put the second point, and you can give it a title here, and you address it quickly, okay? So you need to structure your review, your rebuttal properly. And the first thing you need to do is start with the positive. So whatever the reviewers have emphasized as positive, R1, for example, R3, you know, emphasize the, you know, the novelty of our method, and you can code them. So if they said the word novel, if they said the word, for example, exciting or whatever, okay? So you pick up the good words, the positive words that have been pointed out or mentioned in the reviews by these reviewers, you cluster them together, and you write the first 3 sentences of your rebuttal. The first 3 sentences are positive, and the rest addresses the negative, which is, you know, the negative points or issues. So let's say these 2 have pointed out the same negative point. So here you can say R1, R3, you know, and you can basically, you need to name the point. What is it? Is it, for example, I don't know, generalizability, robustness, whatever point the issue they pointed out, you need to address it. And here we call it clustering. So you group them together. You group this with the third with the first, because you don't have space. So you cannot actually address each one of them individually. You need to cluster. And it's an art of argumentation, logic, of course, respect, okay, acknowledgement, and clarification, okay? So now after you write your rebuttal, you submit your rebuttal. You need to, I think you have 10 days to do so or less. And after your rebuttal for MICCAI, then then this is what is so interesting. So your rebuttal will go into will be assigned to 3 meta reviewers, 3 senior reviewers or area chairs. So it's not just only 3 reviewers, 1 area chair, but you have your area chair right here, this guy, and you have 2 additional ones that have been added to give a final vote. All right, that's why it's a Class A1 hard conference to get into, because it's not just only 3 people, it's 3, 4, 5, 6 in total. Okay. And 3, I would say, reviewers, and the other ones that are senior. So these 3 will, as a meta reviewer, let's say I'll be assigned what we call them second papers. So it's not the first papers or the primary papers that have been assigned to me. These are the secondary papers. So I actually need to read, as a second meta reviewer, I need to read the 3 reviews, the meta review, the rebuttal, and I need to write something and give a score. Okay, so write a short summary, give a score, and then basically based on these 3, a final decision will be made based on the majority score voting. So each one of them will give a final score. Okay, and the system will automatically reject or accept. There may be some moderation by the MICCAI chairs. Okay, the program committee members. Okay, the PCs. All right, so that's the story, or that's the review process of a MICCAI paper, and other top conferences are quite similar, and they may be actually heavier with an open review, live review, public review, such as ICLR and EURIPS. Okay. Cool. Now, to wrap up quickly, this says you guys can access the rebuttals. So if you go, for example, to conferences, MICCAI.org 2022 papers, you will see all the lists of papers, and you can click on the accepted papers and their reviews. So for example, here you can select by topic, such as computer-aided diagnosis. You find deep myth, for example, for cell profiling. And when you click on that, you'll find the paper info, the reviews, meta review, also what I talked about, the author feedback, the rebuttal, and the post-rebuttal meta review is the final stage. So all of this is available online, and you just need to do this for 2022. And I think if you change 22 with 23, you will access the rebuttal of 23. Okay, so you mark this website because it's important. And now, so when you read the rebuttals of research papers related to your topics, so there are several things or several elements to focus on. Number 1 is the writing, how to write a rebuttal. So you can copy paste rebuttals and learn from the best rebuttals. Same thing, create a vocabulary, a portfolio of rebuttals. The logic, the argumentation and reasoning, okay? Logic, it's a lot of logic, argumentation, reasoning, anticipate criticism. You may also improve your rationale and motivation, because many would say, oh, your method is so fancy, but it's not there is no rationale, it's not well motivated. Run and design better experiments. So we have a question here. How many papers do you manage to submit? So usually it's about 30 papers in total as an area chair MICCAI. Number of hours, it varies, but I would say it should not take this service as an area chair, including the reading of, of course, you need to screen the papers, read them in the reviews. So yeah, so it would take, depends on your speed and also area of expertise. If I'm reviewing a paper on GNNs, I'll get it right away. I won't spend a lot of time. If I'm reviewing something I haven't worked on before, so I need to do a lot of reading, right? So it varies, but I would say, like a few days to a week, yeah, maximum. But it could be done in a few days. Yeah, and you got this, also the rebuttal. So the checklist for the rebuttal: when drafting your response to the rebuttal reviews or reviews in general, even when you write your response to the reviews and the reviewers, remember that you are having a conversation with the reviewers. Okay, so you're explaining to them as if you're talking to them, in person. So that feeling is important to convey to the reviewers, and do not take it personally. So do not take the reviews personally, the criticism personally. It's not about your work, and it's not about your persona or who you are, okay? So you need to take it in an abstract way, scientific way. First, start by thanking the reviewer for their comment. Use scientific, not emotional, argumentation and reasoning. Support your argumentation with scientific evidence, so important, by rooting or referencing research papers in line with your point of view. You need to consolidate, confirm your point of view scientifically and with evidence. Okay, so it's not just about talking or arguing, right? Be confident when it comes to raised issues. You can defend with evidence and ease. Okay, so it's important to be confident, especially when you feel that the reviewer did not get it right. Okay, so he was kind of confused. Be humble. Humility and humbleness are very important too. So when you respond, first you need to agree if you feel that, well, it is right to agree, right? So you don't agree all the time. So overdoing it is not right. So I'm talking about being integral, authentic, and ethical. Very important. So you say the right word at the right moment authentically, and not just to, make the reviewer feel good that they pointed something out. So you agree with the reviewer when necessary, when needed, where appropriate, and acknowledge the limitations of your work if you see it that it has these limitations, and you explain how you're planning to address them and why you cannot in this particular study. So also reassuring. So you see, this is all conversation, confident, humble. So it's all like inherent. You can feel the pace and the beat and the style of the writing. All of these are reflecting your writing. So reassuring the reviewer and making them feel that they have been heard. So important. I had a paper rejected because, the way it was, the rebuttal was written, actually, it wasn't well. It's not about the words themselves or the ideas. It's about that we did not make the reviewer feel that, well, we actually really got your point and we address it, or we really got your point, but we cannot address it because of this or that. Okay. Keep it succinct and short. You should not overwrite. Reviewers do not have time. We all do it as I would say as a charity work. All of us reviewers, ACs, right? So we are very busy. It's a service that we do. Okay, so we don't have time. A reviewer won't have time to read through a lot of text and be patient to understand what your paper is about if you don't tell them from the very first sentences. So basically make it short and succinct. And also that applies also to the rebuttal. All right, so if you want to learn more about reviews, you can check openreview.net. It's a great resource for improving your revision. If you check, for example, ICLR conference, let me write these, ICLR Open Review, you'll find so many papers 2023, or in Europe's also, okay? Proceedings and Open Review, you'll find so many examples to learn from. So now the last thing is also I encourage you guys to volunteer as reviewers for journals and conferences after you master this a bit. So after at least you get 2 to 3 papers, you can start doing that. It's a great learning process. And an excellent review should satisfy the following criteria. So when you review, now we're switching roles. You're not responding to the reviewer, you are the reviewer, okay? So when you are the reviewer, you need to give detailed, constructive feedback, highlight the merits of the paper, start with the positive, say, well, I like this and that about the paper. Clarify, any issues. So you need to have clarity in explaining what you didn't understand, or what did you find ambiguous about the paper or unjustified. Clear structure, so structure your review, cluster your suggestions. You need to have a sense of directionality, be rooted, consistent. So all these 4 principles that I mentioned earlier apply also to writing reviews. Using a genuine tone, be encouraging without being condescending, right? Not egocentric. The reviewer takes the role of the reader. So you're gonna feel, you take the role of the reader. Investing time in reading the paper and checking related papers. This is so important. If you agree to be a reviewer, I recommend that you agree to review papers that are closely related to your area of research, which means you have read a lot on the topic. If not, you need to spend a lot of time reading the paper and the related works, which means the paper cited in the references of the paper, and Googling on your own or searching on your own other works that the authors may have missed. Okay, so you always need to do that, of course, but when you are an expert in the field, it's way easier. So when I read, for example, papers related to GNNs, or for example, brain connectomics, for me, I can easily find issues, like if there are issues, or they missed works, or they're, they're very incremental, contributions, because I've been working on this for years, right? So it depends, but for me, it's always I try to be up to date, always keep on reading, expanding, learning, because the field is highly, insanely dynamic, all AI related fields, yeah? So spotting mistakes and typos in the paper, it's very kind to point out mistakes and typos. We all make mistakes and typos all the time. So make sure that you guys do that when you review, okay? And give some helpful suggestions for improvements, all right? You're having a scientific conversation with an author, so tell them, oh, your papers could be improved using this and that and that. So give suggestions about new experiments, or how to further take that, or how to justify better, etc. So you can learn from good examples, as I mentioned. Check ICLR in Europe and other conferences. And yeah, so we come to the end of this. So just as a reminder, you guys can watch these 2 videos. They're well detailed on how to write and structure a paper, research tips, also case study, research paper deconstruction. So if you go to Basira Lab playlist, research tips, you will find these 2, okay? And then there is a book that I read when I did my PhD. My writing was horrible in terms of scientific writing, English correct, scientifically unclear and ambiguous. So I started reading this book, and it's actually really good. I strongly recommend stylish academic writing to read, and also to learn from how to write with style, okay? Cool. So that's that. Thank you so much for attending.